Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome along to the Rolling Cup podcast. I am your host, the amazing Sniper Beef. Welcome along to this wonderful episode on this absolutely freezing day in the UK. I can't tell you how cold I was this morning getting out of the ice bath, but we're sufficiently warmed up now, thankfully. Devastate, how are you?
I am very well, back fighting fit, raring to go. Side question: was it colder getting out of the ice bath than being in the ice bath?
I mean, the ice bath I think was about 1 degrees this morning, but the main problem was getting into the shower and then obviously putting the shower on, basically a cold shower just to warm up. But it felt like the ends of my fingers were still like on fire.
Yeah.
And then yeah, had to have about a pint of tea, about half an hour later just to warm up. But no, it's good for you. I do it every day. I highly advocate it.
Good stuff. Well, yes, thank you for all joining us on this episode. First thing I would like you all to do, please give it a like and hit the subscribe button. It helps out more you can. And for those of you listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the streaming platforms, if you give us a follow, we really much appreciate it. Got a jam-packed episode today, but before we get into it, let's introduce the other guest.
Welcome, Mass Delivery here. Thanks once again for having me back.
Welcome, Mass. How's your day going?
Yeah, I mean, fairly.
Have you ventured outside today?
Yeah, I did. I had to put the bins out.
First world problems.
Yeah.
First world problems.
So it's been a fairly PH7 experience today.
Very PH7 experience.
And for those of you who don't know what PH7 means, very neutral, it's not offensive, it's very placid. So for those of you who don't know that terminology.
So if you describe someone as being PH7, they don't do anything with their life. They're very boring. It's just very vanilla. Very vanilla.
Yes.
Anyway, moving on. We've had a little event this week called CES 2025, and there's been a few announcements. The Nvidia CEO did a 2-hour presentation, which apparently was one of the most engaging 2-hour presentations from a 61-year-old that anyone's ever seen. So I think we'll probably just dive right into CES and Devastate. I'll let you take it away, and then Mass and I will chip in where required.
Yeah, so we're going to kick straight into CS, and now for full transparency, it is Wednesday. We haven't seen the whole of the event, so we're just going to cover off some of the core things to do with gaming that have happened so far. And as Beeper has rightly said, we've had Jensen, the Nvidia CEO, give a massive keynote, and we're going to delve into some of the announcements by Nvidia this week. So, as we spoke about in the podcast a couple of weeks ago, we expected that the RTX 5000 series was going to be announced. Now, really interestingly, we have had the announcements of the 5090, the 5080, 5070 Ti, and the 5070. We have some, not all of the specs, but we have the headline specs, the headline story that they're wishing to tell. We had pricing, a bit in US dollars, and we'll come on to that in a bit. And we have a couple of release dates as well. So what we'll do is we are going to kickstart on the RTX 5090. Which, in terms of the headline specs, is going to have 92 billion transistors. It's got the next-gen tensor cores, more ray tracing cores, and double the AI processor speed of the 4090. This is going to be the most powerful graphics card ever been built. This is better than any of the RTX workstation GPUs that have been released previously. So this is basically, this might as well be a Titan.
Yeah, I mean, Devastate. I was reading a bit about it today. Like, do you think we should take it on face value, what we're seeing from the specs, or do you think we need to wait for the benchmarking for people to get their hands on it, the testers, etc., for them to go, right, this is what it looks like at 4K, this is what it looks like at 1440, 1080p, etc., and what does that look like? Or do you think a lot of the consumers are going, it's a done deal? Like for me, on pricing, it looked like the 5070 looks like a done deal. But from a 5090 perspective, I mean, it just looks absolutely absurd.
In terms of, I think whenever a company displays performance results on a keynote presentation, be it Apple, be it Nvidia, AMD, Intel, anything, they will have cherry picked the best examples possible.
Yeah.
So I think we do have to take them with a grain of salt, but I think what you can do is almost extrapolate them out generally. Now, where we do have cases of a 4090 versus a 5090 in particular games, I will say right now we have Cyberpunk running at Ultra. I think it's running on 4K off the top of my head, but I might need to double check that. The core thing, RTX 4090 running with DLSS 3.5 with ray tracing on, compared to the 5090 with the new DLSS 4 with ray tracing on. The difference is 4090, 109 frames per second average, 5090, 234 frames per second.
It's filthy.
Now,
it's filthy.
They have done some work on the on Cyberpunk to make it better performance on 4090. I suspect these are 4K numbers.
Yeah. On Cyberpunk, it definitely will be 4K.
But so I think that just goes to show that the bandwidth update and the quality update is absolutely massive. Just to give you an idea, Alan Wake 2, double FPS. Black Myth Wukong, more than double. A Plague Tale Requiem is about 25% uplift. Far Cry 6 is only about 10% uplift. But actually on work tasks, so if you're doing any work with Premiere Pro, any proper rendering, it's massive. It's got 32 gigabytes DDR7 memory, which is wild. And so
Mass's whole computer doesn't have 32 gigs of RAM.
No. Now, there's a couple of what I would say good things about it, good news stories. That card is launching of an MSRP of $2,000, which is slightly cheaper than when the 4090 launched. But I do want to delve, and it's going to be the best card in the market. It's going to be incredible, but 99.9% of people are not going to be buying that card. So let's actually get into what the majority of the gamers are going to be getting. 5080, 5070 Ti, 5070. Now, I'll start with the 5070. The best pricing I think I've seen in a long time. I was surprised. $549. It's still a lot of money, but it's really attractive compared to when the 30 series launched, 3000 series launched at the height of COVID and the height of the scalpers. I end up paying like 800 quid for my 3070. So
I think the thing in the presentation from Jensen was when they went, it was 5070 with 4090 performance, and then they flipped the price, and everyone went, oh,
yeah.
Because obviously, you like 3 weeks ago, you went and go and bought a 4090. You're still paying $1,500, $2,000, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
In that ballpark. And if you can go and buy a 5070, caveat if you can get your hands on one. Can you go and get a 5070 and get more performance, or maybe slightly more, or equal performance to a 4090 for a third of the price? Even less than less than a third, more like 30% of the price, more 25% of the price to a certain degree. I mean, that to me is probably going to be one that most people are going to look at, isn't it?
I 100%. Now, I think it's just super important to remember that he said that, and then he sort of slid in a slight caveat, and it's with AI.
Yeah.
Now, there's a couple of things that are very important with that as well. Firstly, VRAM. So you're not going to be able to do 4K gaming still on the 5070. It doesn't have enough VRAM. I think you're going to want at least the 16 gigs of VRAM. The 5070 only has 12. Now, for good 4K gaming, to make sure that everything is free, that memory is just not enough. So that's just something. Obviously, you get the more VRAM with the 4090. So that is going to be the main comparison. In terms of actually playing the game, if you're running it in 1440p, I think it will be almost identical. I don't think you're going to see anything different. But that VRAM is a critical thing and something to keep an eye on. The 5070 does have 16 gigs of VRAM. Sorry, let's say VRAM. Just memory bandwidth. Sorry, of memory. I think it is important to remember, though, that when you start looking at the 5070, they have priced the 5070 Ti. They have priced these really well, in my opinion. So we have the 5080 at $1,000. We have the 5070 Ti at $750, and we have the 5070 at $549. So I think that there's enough in between to really distinguish it. I think that it's a good thing for gamers. Some of these cards are cheaper than last year's cards when they came out, but I think that the 5070 is probably going to sell out incredibly quickly.
But you know what? Talking about selling out. So you know what I saw someone talking about on TikTok. I think it was yesterday or this morning. They were basically saying that because of the price of the 5070, that it's of the MSRP, so it's going to be just over 500 quid here in the UK. The scalpers are going to be like, right, how many can I get my hands on? And if they're basically at 4090 performance, I can charge 1500 quid for one. And they'll get away. Of course, they'll get away with it. But I can just see the scalpers going absolutely ballistic, and people won't be able to get unless Nvidia have gone. Let's flood the market and make sure we get enough out there, so there's no opportunity for scalpers. But we know how that usually works. But I just see that the scalpers are going to be there and just put these horrific prices, and people are going to pay it.
Yeah, I think.
Go on, Mass.
What are you saying at both the 5070 and the 5070 Ti? You're saying you reckon that scalpers will go for it?
I think definitely the 5070, because it was the fact that Jensen basically the slide that he had was 5070 4090 performance $539, and you're like,
just to clarify, you said that, but it'll be at 4090 performance. But did you say that it would not be able to give you 4K? It would not be able to do 4K. Or
it won't be able to do 4K simply because of the memory.
But the 4090 can do 4K.
That's correct. So the 4090 has, I think it's 24 gig of RAM or 24 gig of memory. The 5070 only has 12 gig.
What about the Ti then?
The Ti has 16. The Ti will be the 4K card. Yes.
Okay. So that's £729.
Yeah.
So it's what, 190 more than the 5070. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
a good.
Now, how many people are running 4K gaming monitors? And also, I think it's a very important thing to remember when we're talking about graphics cards or individual components, that if you stick a 5090 into a machine that is 3-4 years old, you will not get these numbers.
Yeah, the bottleneck of the CPU, isn't it?
The CPU, the motherboard, the RAM in your machine, it will be bottlenecked. So I think it's always important to remember that these are tested using the latest motherboards on the latest BIOS. These are tested using the latest CPUs. These are tested using the best RAM, the most optimal conditions. And if you want the ultimate components, and then you've got to buy a great 4K monitor. That whole package is costing thousands upon thousands. So I think it's important to remember that the majority of people won't have 4K monitors. So I think that most people now are running 1440p. I think it's been a comfortable gaming spot for the last 5 or 6 years.
But if you've got, say, you've got a graphics card at 1440p and it's giving you 60 plus frames a second, would you notice that much difference if you buy a 5070 from frames per second? Is it just the actual visual performance that's going to look better rather than the actual the image is going to look better rather than the actual speed of the way the game runs? Because if you're getting 60 plus frames a second, the human,
I mean, 60 frames per
won't be able to
second
notice
is
too much of a difference, will it?
Oh, 60 to 150, you notice a massive difference.
Yeah,
but
huge.
The ideal. I mean, in an ideal world, you want games to try and run at the same frame rate as the refresh rate of your monitor. So if you're running a 240 hertz monitor, you try and want to get you almost have up to 240 frames per second to play with. Now, ultimately, the better the graphics card, the better the quality of the graphics can run at that frame rate. You're generally better off, in not every game, but in a lot of games, reducing your graphics reducing the graphics quality to improve your frames per second, rather than cranking the quality of your graphics and reducing your frames per second. So I think that this card, okay, it's not going to do 4K, but it's going to run 1440p at probably almost every game in ultra quality. And I think and get 200 frames per second out of it is a fantastic place to be if it can get there.
Yeah, Mass. What I was going to say, Mass. What I would say to Devastate's point is, so I've got a 240 hertz monitor, and I run League of Legends at 240 frames a second, and it is, and obviously it's not a high graphics game, but it's the difference between like 60 frames per second on League and 240 is, oh my, honestly, it's like playing in slow motion.
Yeah.
It's literally like playing in slow motion. But at 240, it's boom. It is literally like that.
Yeah, as you said, coming back to the other point, what you're saying, Sam. Yeah, good. What you said in regards to the RTX 5070 Ti, you said it's £729. So, what's an entry level 4K monitor going to cost? I mean,
so I think
my monitor now. Sorry, Devastator, just about in. My monitor now is 840, and I paid 1,100 quid for that back in May.
It's a really good monitor as well.
Yeah.
It's a cracking.
So
that's a cracking price, to be honest. I mean, I don't know if that would, but again, to buy the 5070 Ti and then to get the monitor to go with it, it's.
Well, I was literally whilst you two were chatting, I just had a quick look. So I've got a 4080 Super, so very good graphics card, and I paid £1,000 for it back in May. I can still sell it. I just had a quick look. They're selling on eBay used for 900. So I could sell it, buy a 5070 Ti, and have 150 quid in my pocket as well. Which to me is an absolute no-brainer.
It is. It's
so you can pick up, just to give you an idea, the cheapest ballpark monitor, 500 quid, 32-inch 4K with and that's a 144 hertz refresh rate, which is, I think, about the minimum you'd want for gaming.
Yeah.
But then I suppose that you've got, say you get your 5070 Ti, you've got your 4K monitor, but then as you said, the rest of my PC not obviously my PC, but somebody else's PC could act as a bottleneck, and you won't actually get the most out of the 5070 Ti, which then I suppose, as you say, brings you back to, you know, that
You got to
maybe
start
that's
from
why a lot
you
of people are going to go for the 5070 instead, aren't they? Unless
yeah,
they, you know,
because you've almost then got to start from square one, and like I mean, Mass's PC has still got a floppy disk drive in it. It's that old, but
it's got a disk drive, a DVD. It's DVD.
Genuinely pricing wise, for me, if I can buy a 5080 for it's gonna be about 900 quid, isn't it?
It's 9.
Yeah.
Hang on.
If I can get hold of one, I'm 100% buying one and selling my 4080 Super for the same price.
£979 for the RTX 5080.
Yeah. So, I mean, literally, I've got one in front of me now. It's sold on eBay yesterday for 900 quid used.
Yeah,
and
I mean, those prices will come down.
Oh yeah, of course they'll come down. They'll probably be 600-700, but for the upgrade in performance, I think it's a no-brainer.
I agree.
Yeah.
Particularly given I've got the rig to handle anything plus the monitor, etc. So
there is a couple of points I just want to come in on. So firstly, ultimately, this is Nvidia. So these prices, I'm assuming, are going to be Founders cards, Founders Edition, Nvidia branded cards. When they go out to board partners, so your Asus, your MSIs, your I think ASRock, and there's a few other ones that we're going to see a variety of spikes and performances on different cards. So this is us from the future here, but I just wanted to come in and quickly say that we now have some of the partner manufacturer cards. So for the RTX 5090, we have Gigabyte with 6 different cards. We've got their Aorus Extreme Waterforce. We've got a Aorus Master. We have the Aorus Master Ice, a Wind Force, and a Wind Force Overclock version. We also have an Asus ROG. We have a Asus Astral, and 2 variations of that. And then we also have the Zotac and 4 variations of the Zotac for the 5090. In the 5080 graphics cards, we have a whole host of different manufacturers. Gamewood with a lot, Palette with a lot of them, MSI. We also have a PNG version as well. 5070, we've got PNY and Asus producing a total of 6 between them. And for the 5070, we currently only have 2 listed, and both made by PNY. One that is for overclocking, one not for overclocking. And the overclock one's got it's all RGB lit up. No details on the final pricing for them at the moment. The 5070 and the 5070 Ti, pre-orders expected in February, and as we mentioned previously, that the all of the 5090s and the 5080s will be available to pre-order on the 30th. That information has come from Overclockers, and I do expect. We spoke about scalping. I do expect them to try and almost do a limit of 1 per customer. I think that will be, but that's not going to stop people buying it across multiple different websites, with multiple different email addresses and multiple addresses, stuff like that. So we'll wait and see, and we'll talk about probably the state of scalping in a couple of weeks. Yeah. But that is everything on the graphics card front. They've released some new laptops with the 5000 series in laptops. We're not going to really delve into that too much. One thing I did want to get onto was AMD. So AMD has we spoke about the new best gaming chip in the world a couple of weeks ago. AMD has now announced the Ryzen 9 5950 X3D CPU and the 5900 X3D CPU which are going to be the best gaming CPUs in the world, bar none. It's going to destroy everything. It's going to blow everything out the water. They're going to be expensive CPUs. These are going to be 600, 700, 800 pound CPUs. We know that they're using like the Ryzen 5 X3D architecture. The 9950 is 16 cores, 32 threads with a 5.7 performance boost clock. The 9900 is 12 cores, 24 threads with a 5.5. These CPUs, you're gonna want to marry. We spoke about the new graphics cards, and we talk about bottlenecking system. You're gonna want these CPUs. These are gonna be wild.
Are these? Did you say upwards of £800?
I think that the 9950 is going to be 799, maybe 800.
So let's say that it is 800 plus. Oh, if you want a GeForce 5090 to pair with it, so just for the two, we're up to £2,739.
Yep. So and then you've got £200 motherboard. £200 motherboard. So, then we're going to want a minimum of 32 gigs of
64.
Well, no, 60. Minimum 34 gigs of GDR5 memory. So then we're talking a couple of £100 on that. We're going to want a 4 terabyte NVMe drive.
Yep.
So we're talking another couple of $100 on that. And then I think the monitor. We're going to need a cooler. So we're going to probably want to go with the Noctua cooler. That's another £120. Then
monitor.
Well, I'm just specking out a PC.
Yeah.
And we're actually 8K monitor. I don't want a 4K monitor if I'm spending that much. That graphics card can.
And do you know what? Because the power draw and the amount of cooling required for this machine, we're actually going to need a case that can handle the amount of cooling that is required. So we have balanced airflow. So we're probably going to end up spending £250 on a case, maybe 200. Right. Okay, so we have a baseline PC. Then if we want an 8K monitor, I don't think we have an 8K monitor that can do. Can we do? Have we got one that does? Can we do 178K? So we got it's a 55-inch 8K monitor.
Oh, yep. That's the LG, is it?
That's a Samsung. We've got some Samsung monitors.
The PC alone is now up to £3,709.
That's £5,000. It's £5,000, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds about right. And then but then you want to have your top quality mouse and keyboard headset.
Yes, we're talking a minimum of £2,000 on a monitor.
Wow. So you're now looking at it's going to be over £6,000 then by the time you're done.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's the same price as a fully spec'd out Mac.
And you'll be out of date within 18 months.
Yeah, such is the industry. But yes, I'm incredibly excited about these CPUs. Do you know what? The CPUs make me want to upgrade more than the new graphics cards. I think that they're such a performance uplift on your system, but these are going to be they are an average versus the 7950 X3D, so last gen's version, 8% faster for games. When you think about when the GPU is the heavy lift, that your CPU can affect performance by 8%. I think that sort of tells the story. And in games like your CSGO, so your Counter-Strike 2s, your League of Legends, which are predominantly CPU ran games because of single-threaded performance, this will just blow all of those competitive the esports scene out the water. So I just wanted to touch on that. I've got some other news I just want to cover off. Lenovo, this is quite an interesting one, I believe. Lenovo has unveiled the new handheld gaming called the Legion Go 2 and the Go S. Now, one really interesting that outside of the Steam Deck, which has used Steam OS, and there's some rumours in the part that they're going to make a fully fledged Steam OS operating system. And I need to do a bit more of a deep dive on it. We'll cover that in a future podcast. But all the other handhelds on the market run Windows. But the Lenovo is going to be the very first handheld non-Valve made to run SteamOS. The SteamOS is based on Linux, but I think it's really interesting that this is going to be the very first one. So it'll be interesting to see how a device not made by Valve does with SteamOS. So we'll keep our ears to the ground on that. Few headline statistics on that. It's an 8.8-inch OLED screen with the Ryzen Z2 or the Z2 Extreme processor, 32 gigs of RAM, 2 terabyte SSD. So that machine is way more powerful than your PC, Mass. And it's starting at $649. So actually quite a bargain.
Which one is that? The SteamOS version?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking on GameSpot. I'm looking, so the Windows version is $730 and the SteamOS version is $500.
Yeah, so it's going to be $649 UK. That for the top model.
Yeah.
They in May they're going to release a slightly cheaper variation of it.
It's honestly mind blowing that these things are literally better spec than Mass and Evra's PC.
Yeah,
it's utterly absurd.
Now, do you know what would be really cool is someone who do something like, you know how you get the Switch, you can get the dock, so you can then go and play the dock on a TV. If you could take one of these and then plug in a mouse and keyboard, plug in an external monitor, and run that as a PC, I think that'd be really, really cool. I don't know if any of
Mass, maybe you can do. I'll say, Mass, maybe you could do that instead of buying a new PC.
Yeah,
just that. Yep.
But we know that in 2025, Mass will be buying his new PC. It's inevitable.
Yeah, we're going to bully him into it.
Yeah.
Oh, what are you saying? Once GTA's been released, is that what?
Oh no! Before this year's link up.
Oh, okay.
Has to be done.
I think I can run everything though this year. It's next year that if GTA is released in autumn, I won't be able to run that.
No. Well, we need to do. In fact, what we might do in the next couple of weeks. I think next week we'll touch on the last couple of days of CES.
Yeah.
And then what we'll probably look at is all the big games that are coming out this year, and have a deep dive into that. Then we'll, by the time that comes out, then we'll have the 505000 series GPUs coming out. And then the other thing I just want to touch on, because I think this is something that not many people have spoken about, and I was actually unaware of it until early today. So it's about cables. So it's not the most intriguing, but I think this is some good information here. So the HDMI forum have announced the next version of the HDMI specification.
Oh yes, 2.2.
2.2. So that is effectively going to double the bandwidth. So at the moment, 2.1 can handle 48 gigabits per second. That's going up to 96. Now that's basically going to enable 5K and 8K gaming, because the bandwidth is big enough to be able to push the signal down the line, down the cable. So the HDMI 2.1 cables top out at 4K and below 200 frames per second. If you want more FPS, you have to use DisplayPort, or you have to reduce the resolution. But it coming in the second, third quarter of this year, we're going to be able to do 4K at 480 frames per second.
That's acceptable, isn't it? You can live with 480 frames per second. I mean,
Yeah.
how many monitors have got a 480 hertz refresh rate? Would be the next question.
Well, we touched on a couple of them last week's podcast, didn't we, about some
yeah.
monitors at CES. But this new standard 2.2 will be able to do 12K at 120 FPS.
That's
Okay,
disgusting.
So this is a standard that is probably going to be there for the next 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, because me and Mass were talking about this on WhatsApp when we saw it, that they were talking. This is from a TV perspective rather than a gaming point of view, and they were talking about doing 16K TVs, and I'm like, there's not even any 8K like material for it from a TV perspective, and they're already talking about 16K. So you're like, they're almost like making the jump ahead. But to Devastate's point, like that is obscene, like capability from a gaming point of view, which shows you where gaming's got to be going in the next few years, surely.
100% agree. Although I think that there's something happening in Japan soon where they're going to try and do 8K streamed. The problem is, you do 8K streamed, your bandwidth's got to be bloody massive. Your bit rate's going to be low. Like, you're probably not going to be able to run it at any particular high definition HDR standards. So we'll wait and see what comes out the back of that. But yeah, I wanted just to touch on that because I think that is like that cable news is something that does slip under the radar. That is all I'm going to cover for now. Obviously, there's been lots of stuff announced at CES. I've tried to keep it predominantly gaming related.
Was there anything non-gaming related which really sort of made you go, "Oh wow, that's interesting"? I mean, the big one from before. While you think there's two from me. There was one. There's the mic. I think from Enron. They called it the micro-nuclear home-powered egg. So it's basically an egg. It's about like yay big. It's like 2 feet tall, but essentially it will power your entire home for up to 10 years. That was quite interesting. And then the second one was the supercomputer from Nvidia, which is basically like the size of, I don't know, like an A5 bit of card, with just absolutely absurd capabilities, particularly around AI, that it can do on the device itself, which was very, very interesting.
Yeah, I think a couple of things that I've seen, there was obviously a lot of bendable screens on show at CES, and bendable screens on laptops. I wasn't overly like wowed by it because I've seen bendable screens. I still think we're some years off for them having a real purpose. Obviously, Nvidia touched on their new AI software, and they're releasing it so it can allow cameras to detect real world and you can run simulations. They obviously brought out a whole sleuth of robots. Again, there was a new monitor, majority design for the Mac. But
we don't talk about Macs on this channel, Devastator.
It's made by LG, a 32-inch 6K monitor running Thunderbolt 5. But that's for design purposes. So, and one thing, a little bit, is for the iPhone that someone's developed on the bottom of the iPhone, like almost a slither, almost like the width of a chewing gum that goes from the bottom, and then it plugs into the bottom, and it gives you 2 gig or 2 terabytes of storage. Just like bam, into the bottom, and it just immediately expands the storage. So it's great for people who do a lot of filming on their phone, so they can carry on filming 4K 60, because that takes up so much space. So I quite like that. And then the only other thing that came across, I'm just trying to remember it, was where was it? Annoyingly, you have 1,000,000,001 tabs open that you
I mean, I like the Nvidia self-driving trucks. I think I quite like those. They were pretty cool as well.
yeah. There was there's been a lot of stuff in the driving world at CES. New dash displays, but the weirdest thing that I've seen is by a company called Nanoleaf, who have decided to jump into the beauty world. Nanoleaf is like you see people with lights behind their screens that are controlled like RGB lights. They've decided to jump into beauty tech and create a $150 face mask to treat skin conditions using UV and ultra ray lighting and stuff.
Very
So,
interesting.
and it's received FDA certification. Not necessarily approval, but certification. So we're wait and see.
Did you see the robot Hoover with the arm, which will pick up stuff if it's in its way? So if like there's a sock or a hat in the way of the robot Hoover, this little arm comes out, picks it up, does the hoovering, and then puts it back. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's
Can it climb stairs?
Yeah, it can do it can do a backflip as well.
If it can climb stairs, that is a game changer.
Yeah.
cool.
Anyway, I think we've pretty much, well, we haven't covered everything at CES. We've covered the main points, particularly around the 5000 series GPUs from Nvidia. I think everyone wanted to discuss that. Hope you've all enjoyed the podcast today. I certainly have, talking around everything to do with CES, and we'll obviously cover the remaining announcements at CES in next week's podcast. So if there's anything you have liked or disliked, we'd love to see it in the comments below. If there's anything you want us to cover next week on the podcast, drop it in the comments below. We'd really appreciate that as well. Anything else from you guys?
No, just a final reminder, if you can like and subscribe, it'd be amazing. And then we're hopefully going to be able to bring you news of when the next link up's going to be very soon.
Indeed.
So
Indeed.
keep your eyes peeled for that. But for now, my name has been Devastate.
I'm the Amazing Sniper Beef.
I've been Mass and Ivry. Tofu.
Catch you later, peeps. Bye-bye.
Bye.